Hello and welcome to StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigaonker. Let's continue our discussion of NCERT series. We are in the discussion of class 9 science NCERT textbook. We are doing a chapter by chapter analysis. Until now, we have completed first 5 chapters. That means some knowledge of chemistry has already been gathered. In chapter 5, we discussed about the cell. And today's discussion is about chapter 6. In fact, this is part 2 of chapter 6. You know, chapter 6 talks about tissues. In our previous interaction, which was part 1, we discussed different tissues which are connected to plant. I hope you remember plant tissues. Today, we are going to focus on the animal tissues, the tissues that are found even in our bodies. All right. So let's begin our discussion. But before that, do make a note of 19th of June. Mark the calendar for this particular date because this is the beginning of the most comprehensive program from StudyIQ Prelims to Interview Initiative, completely in English. First English batch is beginning. Here we will be hand-holding you through your Prelims 2024, Mains 2024 and interview for 2024 Civil Service Examination also. Just visit our website www.studyiq.com. You'll get all the information. Do not forget to use my code RAHULLIVE to get maximum discount. Again, I'm repeating, 19th June is the date. Mark it. I'll see you in the class. Right, let's begin. As I told you, our discussion is about tissues. We have discussed this in our previous interaction also. I told you different kinds of cells, when they club together for some sort of a specialized function, they become tissues. Different tissues, they ultimately then lead up to organ, and our body is made up of organ system. Our entire body is organ system. All right. And we also discussed about the differences between tissues, plant tissue and animal tissue. And I told you plant tissues are not very complex, right? Plant tissues are designed, or plant tissues are in such a way that they help in the stationary habit of the plants. They are rather simple. But when we talk about animal tissue, animal tissues are more complicated. Animals are mobile. They move from one place to another place. They need different kinds of tissues which enable their movement. Our sensory organs are also quite heightened. We need different kinds of tissues for our sensory organs. So our tissues are more complex. And the growth of these tissues is not limited to any areas. And for that, we need continuous energy to maintain these tissues. Right? For example, if you go out for running, what happens? Your muscles will get exhausted. So you need more energy to keep yourself going on. So more energy is also required. But you do understand that animal tissues, after reaching a stage of maturity, they do not show any kind of further growth, but they do show degeneration. We have discussed that before. All right. So today's discussion is about animal tissue. Animal tissues are basically divided into 4 different types. The first one is epithelial tissue. Then we have muscular tissue. Then we have connective tissues. And finally, we have our nervous tissue. And among them, there is different sub-classification. We'll understand one by one. Epithelial tissues are further divided into simple squamous, cuboidal, epithelial, granular epithelium. We'll talk about different kinds of epithelial tissues. We'll also talk about muscular tissues. 3 kinds of muscular tissues are found: striated, smooth, and cardiac muscles. 3 kinds of muscular tissues. Connective tissues are various. In fact, connective tissues are many in our body. Blood itself is one of the kind of connective tissues itself. There is blood, there is muscle, there is bone, right? There is ligament, there is cartilage. There are so many things, so many tissues which are basically connective tissues. And then we also have nervous tissues for sending electrical impulses or signals to our brain. So let's discuss these tissues one by one. First one, epithelial tissue. Please remember, by the name epithelial, many times what aspirants think, epithelial is only connected to skin, right? Many times that confusion is mainly because of the term epidermis, right? Epidermis is external skin, dermis skin. But epithelial or epithelium are tissues. Yes, of course, they form the basis of your skin, but epithelium is present in almost all your organs, even in internal organs also. So epithelium is basically a kind of a protective tissue which is found in most of the bodily organs and cavities. All right. Epithelial tissues, they are all made up of epithelial cells which have specific functions. Some might protect you, Some help in secretion, some help in absorption, some help in filtration. There are so many different kinds of epithelial tissues. As I told you, epithelium, it is a type of body tissue mainly forming the covering, internal covering as well as external surface covering. Many of your glands have epithelium and they have different kinds of function. We'll talk about them one by one. But what are the different kinds of epithelial tissues found? These categorization are made on the basis of cells, the epithelial cells that are present. If the epithelial cells are like squashed cells, they are called as squamous epithelium. And if these squamous epithelial cells are again arranged in a stratified fashion, they are called as stratified squamous. Many times epithelial cells are in form of a cube. They are called as cuboidal epithelial cells. And if these cuboidal cells are again stratified, that means if they are jumbled up together, they are called as stratified cuboidal. Many times epithelial cells can also be in form of columns. They have single nucleus columns. They are called as columnar epithelial cells. Many times you also have stratified columnar cells. And in many areas, we also have some sort of cilia or microvilli which have specific functions or specific roles in these epithelial cells. In general, broad classification has been made into these four. Cuboidal epithelium, where it consists of epithelial cells which are in shape of a cube having single nucleus, cube shaped cells. You'll find them in your kidney, in your different tubes, in your small glands. They also secrete stuff. They secrete hormone, secrete other things. Apart from that, squamous epithelial, as I told you, squamous means it is a single layer of cells like a squashed cell. They are present in lungs, heart and blood vessels. Columnar epithelial cells, they are in form of column, they are elongated. They are normally found in your alimentary canal, in your GI tract. In fact, the columnar cells having microvilli can be found out in your small intestine, in your AI tract. Right? They absorb stuff, they also secrete. Apart from that, there are stratified squamous epithelium. These are stratified, that means squashed cells, but stratified. You can find them in your esophagus and your mouth. Apart from this, epithelial tissues are also categorized as transitional epithelium. It is also called as urothelium. This transitional epithelium, it looks something like this. It is found mostly in the urinary tract. Apart from transitional epithelium, there is also glandular epithelium. Now, these are found mostly in different glands that we have. We have pituitary gland, right? We have a hypothalamus, thalamus, pancreas, so many glands we have. And these glands are responsible for secretion. They secrete hormones, proteins, and other chemical substances. And many kinds of epithelial tissues, as I told you, there is columnar epithelium, and this columnar epithelium, if it has some sort of a cilia, they help in sensation. So we have olfactory epithelium also, predominantly in our ear. In our ear, we have olfactory epithelium, which has some sort of a microcilia, or they also have specialized kind of extension, which help in perception, which help in, say, hearing sound in perception. All right. So epithelial tissues, they have different kinds of functions. As I told you, it's not just about skin, of course, skin, but internally also, internal organs, internal lining, they are made up of epithelial tissues. And many a times epithelial tissues, they work as protective measure. Classic example being skin. It gives you your innate immunity. It does not allow things to get inside your body. Many epithelial tissues, they secrete, especially the glandular epithelium. They secrete enzymes, hormones, fluids. Many epithelial tissues, they absorb stuff. Epithelial cells in your lungs, they help in gas exchange. Epithelium in the small intestine, they help in absorption. Epithelium also helps in your excretion, predominantly in kidney. Apart from that, they also have a function of filtration. Many epithelium tissues, they help in respiratory tract filtration. They also have sensory reception. As I told you, the cilia that they have in your, that is the olfactory epithelium, they have stereocilia in ear. It is a classic example of epithelium, which gives you some sort of sensory reception. All right. So this is the first kind of tissue, that is epithelial tissue. Let's move to the next one. Let's talk about connective tissues. By the name itself, you do understand connective tissue means it connects one part to another part, or they have a job of connecting. So connective tissues are comprised mainly of fibrous cells, and when I say connection, that means cells would be rather less. They will have more and more extracellular matrix. That means they are going to have some sort of specialized job. Some will have extra amount of protein, some will have extra amount of fat, some will have extra amount of specific thing, because it has some specialized job. All right, so connective tissues generally, they bind us together, they bind our body together. Say for example, muscle is a connective tissue. They also form the framework. My bones, they are nothing but my framework. So I have to connect bone to muscle, so I need another kind of connecting tissue. In my entire body, I need some sort of transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. For that, I need blood. So connective tissues, they bind the structures together, they form the framework, they support the body, they support different organs, they support body as a whole. Many store fat, many store proteins, many help fight diseases. So connective tissue, they occur throughout your body with different kinds of functions. All right, so connective tissue, a specific trait about them is that the number of cells would be rather less, but they have extracellular matrix, or they have some sort of intercellular matrix, which is a characterization of them. Now, what kind of connective tissues do we have in our body? We have different kinds called areolar connective tissue. Blood is a connective tissue, please remember that. Osseous tissue, that is bone. We have adipose tissue, it has fat. So let's talk about one by one. First one, connective tissue, blood. Blood is basically a fluid which has different kinds of cells. The blood is considered as a connective tissue which is composed of different kinds of specialized cells. There are RBCs for transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. There are WBCs which provide immunity to you. There are again platelets which help in your blood functions, which help your blood to clot, stop when there is some sort of injury. So they help in transporting gases, they help in transporting hormones, salts, etc. So blood is also kind of connective tissue. Apart from that, a very important kind of connective tissue is your bone. Your bone, or the osseous tissue, it basically forms the framework of your entire body. Over this bone, there can be other connective tissues which are connected to it. Bones are mainly composed of calcium and phosphorus. Please remember that bone, for hard bones, you need calcium and you need phosphorus based compounds. Apart from blood, apart from bone, there are so many other examples. For instance, bone itself has different types. Compact bone, there is spongy bone. Compact bone comprises of external layer of bone which is very thick, which is hard, but spongy bones are mostly lighter in weight because they are a little spongy. Bone marrow, inside the bone there is bone marrow in it. This is composed of blood. So bone marrow is a soft connective tissue which produces the blood cells, RBC, WBC, etc. Again, the bones and other muscles, other muscular tissues, they are connected through other connecting tissues called as cartilage, ligament. Now ligament, it is a fibrous connecting link between two bones. They hold the bones together, they keep bones in place. There is cartilage, it is a soft kind of connection between two bones to reduce the friction between the bones. So we have different kinds of connective tissues under bones itself. Apart from that, we also have areolar connective tissue. Now areolar connective tissue is a connection between skin and muscles. It is also found around blood vessels, around the nerves. All right, it looks something like this. Areolar tissues, they mainly help in repair of the tissues or repair of the cells. Apart from this, we also have adipose tissue. Now adipose, name itself is adipose, adipocytes. Now these help store fat mostly. We do need fat, we do need lipids, because we need absorption of vitamin A, D, E, K, and for that lipids are extremely important. These lipids are stored in the connective tissue called as adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is found under your skin, it is found in your internal organs, it is also found in your internal cavities, even in your bone marrows. So what did we understand till now? We discussed about The first kind of tissue, that is epithelial tissue, then the connective tissue. So connective tissues, they connect bone with other muscles as well, right? So epithelial, connective, and then muscular tissues. Now muscular tissues are made up of muscle cells. In our body, we find three kinds of muscular tissue. Now, whenever we discuss muscle, everybody thinks about this muscle, right? We go to gym, we build our muscles. Now, these muscles are called as skeletal muscles or striated muscles. Skeletal muscles or striated muscles. The skeletal muscles which are connected to your bones, that is the connective tissue, they are normally striated in terms, they are more like fibers in a very striated, in a jumbled or in a twisted kind of a form. They help in storing fat, they help in your mobility. Apart from skeletal muscle, we also have smooth muscles and cardiac muscles. So in our body, we find only three kinds of muscles. One, muscle which is connected to your bone. In majority areas you find that, but we also have two kinds of specialized muscles. Smooth muscles, which are mostly present in your internal organs, and then specialized cardiac muscles, which are your heart muscles. Please remember, the skeletal muscles, they are striated. The cardiac muscles, they are also striated. Striated meaning they are like fibers, more like twisted or jumbled fibers. So let's talk about these one by one. As I told you, skeletal muscles, these are striated muscles. They are attached to the bones. Bone is a connective tissue. Please remember. Again, these skeletal muscles or skeletal muscle tissue, they have a very important peculiarity, and I want you to remember this from exam perspective. Skeletal muscles, these are fibers. They are striated, they are cylindrical. Remember, they are multinucleated. That means there is more than one nucleus present in these muscle cells. Also, they are under voluntary control, meaning if I am going to move my hand, it depends on me whether I move it in this direction, this direction, this direction, because it is under my control, right? It's under my control, my brain's control, right? Apart from that, these skeletal muscles, they are capable of undergoing some sort of anaerobic respiration for a very short time. Meaning, when the body is exerted, skeletal muscles, they do not need oxygen to carry out their work for very short time. You must have seen many a times that the skeletal muscles, when they are exerted extremely, that's why they are multinucleated, because they give you energy. But say you must have seen sometimes you have cramps. Why do you have cramps? Cramps are nothing but overexerted or overexerted your skeletal muscles, which have undergone anaerobic respiration for a very long time. So what do? You provide more oxygen to it. How? By heating them. More blood supply is provided, water is provided, heating is done. So cramps, they go because more blood reaches to these muscular tissues. One of the examples, please remember this. Apart from that, there are smooth muscles. Smooth muscles, they are non-striated muscles. Right? Mostly found in the alimentary canal, in the urinary bladder, in your blood vessels, etc. Again, these are not in under your control. These are involuntary muscles. They are not under our control. We cannot control them. They work automatically. They are all governed through the central system itself. We cannot move them intentionally, just like we move our muscles, etc. We cannot move them, right? They are called involuntary. Please remember, again, they have single nucleus, and their nucleus is mostly located at the center. They do not look twisted. The third kind of muscle is cardiac muscle. Now, these are specialized muscle. We know cardiac muscle, they are the heart muscles. These muscles never stop. They are not under our control. They are involuntary. We cannot start or stop them on our own. They have to run throughout our life. These muscles have specialized job, that is to provide pumping action to your heart. If the heart stops, life stops. That's why these are also, remember, these are striated, meaning they are like elongated fibers, a little twisted fibers. They also have only single nucleus in these cardiac muscle cells, and they are not under our control. Clear? Muscular tissue. Apart from these tissues, we have nervous tissue. Now, nervous tissue is responsible for relaying the messages from our brain to other parts of our body. They are also present almost everywhere in our body. All these things, they work in conjunction together. Now, nervous tissue, it is composed of basic cells called as neuron. Neuron is the basic unit of nervous tissue. Neuron has single nucleus. It has a dendritic structure so that we connect different neurons. In fact, our body has billions of neurons to relay signals from our brain. Now, we do know our central nervous system consists of the brain and your spinal cord. Spinal cord has different segments, and from brain and spinal cord, your peripheral nervous system begins and different nerves spread through it, so that the central nervous system, it relays messages to all the neurons. For example, if I'm moving this hand right now, what is happening is my brain is sending a signal to the motor neurons in my hand to move the hand, something like this. All right. So the basic unit of these nervous tissues is a neuron, which has dendritic structure towards the nucleus side. It also has axon, and this axon has nerve endings which is connected to the next neuron. It forms a connecting link like this. So the cells that make up the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, they are called as nervous cells, and nervous cells, they make nervous tissue. All right. So they basically help in relay. As I told you, they relay or transfer the impulses from your body. Their structure, they move through dendrites. Dendrites basically receive the impulses, and axon, they send out impulses, right? These receive the signal, and axon, they send out the signal out. There are different kinds of neurons which are found in our body. There are three kinds of neurons: sensory neurons, interneurons, and motor neurons, and they form nervous tissue, right? Sensory nervous tissue, interneuron tissue, and motor neuron tissue. Clear? Right. So these are the basic kinds of animal tissues that we have: epithelium or epithelial tissue, connective tissues, we have muscular tissues, three kinds, and then you have nervous tissue. Okay. Right. That's the end of today's chapter. We'll meet again in our subsequent discussions. Thank you for watching this video, and if you have liked this video, if you have any queries, any doubts, you can always reach out to me on this particular ID @Rahul Sai 222. Thank you for watching this again. Jai Hind.